In the chambers of global power, beneath the chandeliers of Washington's decision-making halls, a message was delivered that sent tremors far beyond the press gallery. Standing side by side, not out of convenience but out of shared conviction, President Donald J. Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu brought forth a declaration that may mark the end of one era and the stormy birth of another. They didn't deliver platitudes. They didn't recycle the same lines we've heard for 50 years. They spoke with intent, with gravity, with the weight of every funeral from Tel Aviv to Gaza bearing down on their shoulders. President Trump opened the discussion by acknowledging what so many world leaders are too timid to say out loud, that peace without security is not peace at all, it's a mirage. And Prime Minister Netanyahu followed, his tone solemn, his resolve unshakable. He wasn't there to pander to global opinion. He wasn't there to please the echo chambers of Geneva or Brussels. He was there to speak for a people who have lived through the unimaginable and refused to repeat it. He was there to speak for children who've learned to identify sirens before they can spell. For families who've buried their loved ones, again and again, while the world turned its head. And what he said was nothing less than a thunderclap in the world of diplomacy. He said the quiet part out loud. That Israel, after everything, could not, and would not, hand over land to those whose goal is destruction. That the Palestinian experiment in Gaza, under Hamas, had already answered the question. That sovereignty granted in bad faith leads not to peace but to rocket fire. That terrorism in a suit is still terrorism. So people aren't likely to say, let's just give them another state and the platform to destroy Israel, he declared. And in that sentence, decades of illusions collapsed like paper towers. Netanyahu wasn't gloating. He wasn't posturing. He was mourning a dream, the dream of peaceful coexistence, shattered not by Israeli policies but by Hamas's bombs. By children used as shields. By martyrdom turned into national currency. And then he said something that, for many, will be the most controversial of all. He said they would seek third countries for potential relocation of Palestinians. A statement that will ignite firestorms in parliaments, protests in streets, editorials across the globe. But what he was proposing, he insisted, was not expulsion. Not ethnic cleansing, but a humanitarian alternative to perpetual war. To move people out of a death spiral, not into exile, but into opportunity. To end the weaponization of hopelessness. To say to young Palestinians, you deserve a future, even if Hamas won't let you have one here. Of course, there will be outrage. From activists who've never lived under rocket fire. From academics who've never sat Shiva for a murdered child. From pundits who confuse ideology with integrity. But Netanyahu was unmoved. Because he wasn't speaking to them. He was speaking to history. And he said Israel would never again put its future in the hands of those who deny its right to exist. He said peace could only come with Palestinians who reject violence. With neighbors who value life more than vengeance. With communities who would rather build schools than dig tunnels. And yes, he said, Israel would retain control of security. Not because they wanted to dominate. But because they had no choice. Because every inch surrendered without conditions had returned as a threat. As a launchpad for terror. As a graveyard for Israelis. We don't care if people say it's not a complete state, he said. Because what is a state if it lives only to destroy another? Because completeness without peace is just an illusion painted on a map. And then came the words that turned the room to stone. We vowed never again. 3 words. Spoken not with anger, but with memory. Not with vengeance, but with vigilance. The vow of a people who remember trains that led to gas chambers. The vow of survivors who turned desert into democracy. The vow of a nation that will never apologize for defending its children. President Trump nodded. Not as a man playing to cameras, but as a leader who has chosen sides in a war of moral clarity. He echoed Netanyahu's resolve. He spoke of a new framework, one where peace isn't built on illusions. Where compromises aren't demanded only of one side. Where the world recognizes that Israel is not just a country, it's a miracle. Born from ashes, sustained by resilience, and still standing, against all odds. He said the world must stop enabling Hamas. That aid sent in good faith cannot keep fueling rockets. That it's time for the region to step up. For Arab nations to offer more than rhetoric. To offer land, opportunity, citizenship. To help Palestinians write a new chapter, not soaked in martyrdom, but filled with life. This was not a final solution. It was a departure from fantasy. It was a call to leaders everywhere: stop demanding Israel commit suicide in the name of diplomacy. Stop rewarding those who glorify blood. Stop calling hatred resistance. This was not the peace plan the world expected. It was not neat. It was not comfortable. But it was honest. And in honesty, there is hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, clarity will succeed where compromise has failed. Hope that future generations of Palestinians might grow up in nations that give them purpose, not targets. Hope that Israelis might finally live without fear, not because their enemies disappeared, but because they stopped being enemies. Hope that history, so full of pain, might finally give way to something else. To something better. And so, from Washington, a new page has been turned. One filled not with promises, but with boundaries. Not with slogans, but with reality. And as the world reacts, debates, and rages, the words still linger. We vowed never again. And this time,